Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another continuing education check-in. Today, we're going back to the basics again, and we're talking about expectations. So we're calling this episode Expectations versus Reality. We're going to talk about all about expectations and what are healthy ones in relationships, what are ones that might not be so healthy, how do you communicate them and manage them well as you're thinking about dating, while you're dating, and in any relationships. And so to get us started, I would like us to define what do we mean when we talk about expectations in relationships? Like, how would we define that?
I feel like I only know, like in your explanation, you were talking about positive expectations, and like, I don't think I ever knew what a good expectation is to have in a relationship. I feel like I only know expectations, like, as far as like things that you want out of your partner, but maybe you're like asking for too much. Like maybe you want them to be like how every rom-com is. And like if
Yeah.
they're not able to read your mind, like they're not meeting your expectation, for an example. But what are some positive, I guess? Like, I don't know, expectations are just like ideas that you have in your mind, like that your partner can either meet or not meet. But like, I don't know, like maybe these are unhealthy expectations, but you never really like ask them of your partner. It's just something in your mind, like by default, you're like hoping or assuming is going to happen.
Yeah. So expectations, they start off just within you. And like
Mm-hmm.
you said, there are things that you want out of your relationship and for your partner to do for you. And so I think that every relationship is different, and there are things that could be helpful for your relationship, things that can be harmful.
Mm-hmm.
And so expectations start within you, and things that have been brought up in your past, things that have come from your childhood. And I think expectations really center around how you want to be loved, and then
Mm-hmm.
how you want your values to be respected in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so, can you give some examples about like unhealthy expectations, Sanya? It doesn't have to like be from you, but
Yeah.
maybe we start there.
Um, I feel like unhealthy expectations are, I would say, are like selfish expectations. So, like, let's say you and your partner both got into a fight. An unhealthy expectation would be like, regardless of how they might be feeling, you want your feelings to be taken care of. You want to be put first. You want, like, even like, it doesn't matter who was wrong, it doesn't matter who's more upset, but like, you want them to come to you and try to make up. That would be like an unhealthy expectation because in that moment you're being super selfish.
Hmm. I hear you. I actually think that's secretly a healthy expectation
Yeah.
because in the moment, oh, I need to explain a little bit.
Okay.
Like, I think the expectation comes from a good place where you
Okay.
want the other person to hear you out and understand where you're coming from, and also
Okay.
put in work to make things better.
Mm-hmm.
That desire can lead to a really harmful action when
Mm-hmm.
you insist on your own way, and you you lash out on them out of that.
Right. Uh-huh.
So I think both partners should expect that out of
From
each
each
other.
other. Okay.
Exactly. To really try to meet the other person's needs, and to uh, seek to better the other person. So yes, like,
Mm-hmm.
it is selfish, but it's not selfish if you're both trying to do it for each other.
Okay. I feel like, sorry, I want to come up with one unhealthy thing that you can agree with. Um,
Am I just
okay.
gonna validate everything you say?
What about an unhealthy expectation could be that um, you want your partner to take you on trips. Not being considered, again, all these expectations that I'm listing out, it's because like you're not having awareness of your partner in that moment. Like, let's say you don't, like, maybe you and your partner have like very similar financial situations or whatever. But you're still expecting, because like in the movies and TV shows, the guy takes the girl on this surprise trip and like he takes care of everything. So maybe you're expecting that. And like it's not, I guess I'll say it's unhealthy because it's like not the most realistic. And then it's putting
Mm.
like pressure, like you said, like financially kind of, that you're like, or like you're expecting to be taken out to like very nice dinners, like every couple of weeks, every month. And you're expecting that he always foots the bill, kind of.
Got it.
So what do you think
So
about those?
I think I just made a breakthrough, and I think one of the most important points of today's episode is that it's okay to have expectations, and as we get further into this, we'll talk about ones that are more likely to be healthy for you and ones that are
Mhm,
less likely. But at the end
mhm,
of the day, what really makes an expectation uh, flourish in your relationship versus like screw up your relationship is how you communicate it. So I think it's okay to want lots of trips or
mhm,
to go out to fine dining and for your partner to splurge on you and
mhm,
take you shopping. But I think that needs to be communicated and communicated at the beginning. And so
mhm,
like you and your partner should be on the same page that that is the lifestyle that you want and that is
mhm,
what you feel comfortable with and that's what makes you feel loved. If your
mhm,
partner can't do that for you, I think it's really important right at the beginning to look very honestly and say, is this person actually able to give me those things?
mhm,
So for me as a guy in that situation, I would have to ask myself, can I give this girl that kind of lifestyle? And if I can't,
mhm,
I have to figure out a way, or I have to not get into this relationship at this time. And then for
right.
the girl, like after I communicate, this is my financial status, this is what I can afford and what I can't, without
Mhm,
getting into too much details, uh,
right.
then the girl has to decide, okay, is this guy someone that I'm still willing to be with if he can't provide me the lifestyle that I want?
Mhm,
Or
mhm,
do I stand firm that this is what I want? It's okay to want those things. There
mhm,
will be people who want to give you those things and are financially able to.
mhm. I guess my question is it even still an expectation if you are communicating it? Like, I always thought expectations, like the reason, I don't know about you, but like I've noticed a lot of times, even in friendships with your family, like just people having expectations and then not saying them out loud and then judging the person for not meeting them, that usually like leads to like problems because then you get disappointed. Like I feel like expectations go hand in hand with like disappointment and they both come together a lot of times. So I'm wondering, like in this example, like is it even still an expectation that you want to be taken out to like nice dinners if you have to say it, or if you want to be like taken shopping, like if you have to ask for it, is it an expectation, or at that point is it
Mm,
you're just like you're asking for something? I don't know.
yeah. So I think there are three levels to expectations. And so
Okay.
the first level is innate. So it starts
Mhm.
within you. It's something that
Okay.
you hold in your heart that you want. And
Mhm.
for you, Sanya, you're talking about expectations that stay at that level one.
Right.
And then I think level two is stated. And so that's when
Okay.
you communicate to your partner, this is what I want in a relationship. This is what
Mhm.
would be really meaningful to me.
Okay.
That's stage two. But then people, like as you get on with a relationship, your expectations change, you change as a person. And so, like, stage three is adjusting and restating if you need. And so, maybe I told you this is something that means a lot to me at the very beginning of a relationship. But maybe
Mhm.
later on, I realized, oh, that's actually not that important. I don't really care about going on trips. It could just
Right.
be like a day trip, it could be
Mhm.
something more affordable. I
Okay. So you
actually
find like a
realized,
compromise.
yeah, and I realized like, oh, the actual thing that I enjoy is quality time.
I
and
see.
it's not actually like the price tag on a trip. And so I communicate that. That's the third stage when you're adjusting. And so
Okay.
a lot of times, like in a relationship, you're going to be in one of those three stages. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's common for most people to stay within the first stage
Mm-hmm.
and for the expectations just to be held within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand like what you're saying, Sonia, because a lot of times you feel like, oh, if I get to stage two and I state my expectation, then it's not an expectation anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, like it almost feels like you ruined the romantic moment. It
Right.
almost feels like now, like you told them, and
Yeah,
now they're doing it because they feel like they have to.
exactly.
And I get it. And so, what I will say to that is, I feel like in every relationship, it's important to talk about it once at the beginning, and then you only have to bring it up if you feel like there's an issue going on or your expectations have adjusted. But I
Okay.
feel like for expectations, there's something that you bring up at the beginning, and then you let the other person to do with it as they will, and to also
Okay.
like respond to that. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
important to give them a chance to acknowledge
Mm-hmm.
and tell you what they think about it and if they think that they can meet those expectations. I
Okay.
think if you had to constantly tell them and say, hey, this is what I want, you're not really meeting it,
Mm-hmm.
then that kills the romance.
Right. Yeah.
But I think if you just do it once at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, you have a conversation, then the other person like will be able to meet your needs, and none of you have to bring it up again if they do
Mm-hmm.
it well.
Okay. Because like right now, I feel like we were talking about like material expectations, but what about like, like the expectation of like we've been dating for X amount of months. Like, am I going to be your girlfriend now? Or we've
Right.
been dating for some amount of more time, and it's like, are you planning to propose? And things like that are also
Yeah.
expectations. So I guess the question is like, which expectations are realistic and which are like absolutely crazy, or not crazy, but which are like, why? When do we start expecting too much out of our partner that it starts to be like harmful to the relationship?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I think one thing that I just want to say is that if you stay at the level one, your
Mm,
expectations stay within you, then something dangerous can happen where you start to make assumptions on both
mm-hmm,
sides. So let's say my expectation is after 3 months, I want to know if we're going to be dating or not. Like, I want to put a
right.
label on it. That's my
Okay.
own self expectation. Let's
Mm-hmm,
say I don't say anything, and after 3 months, nothing happens.
mm-hmm,
And it's a situationship, things are unclear. I'm going to assume that the other person is just messing around. They're not serious
mm-hmm.
about stuff. They're
True.
going to assume maybe something similar about me because I'm not taking the initiative. And
Mm-hmm,
so when you start to make assumptions about each other, like you see this even in families, even in friendships, when you don't talk about what you want, then it's easier to villainize the other person. Whereas if
mm-hmm,
you ask for what you want, you're helping the other person give you what you want. It's like
mm-hmm,
giving someone a Christmas wish list.
mm-hmm,
You're just letting them know like this is this is what I want. This is what makes me feel loved.
mm-hmm,
And it's better than like wanting them to read your mind because no one can
mm-hmm,
do that. Like no
mm-hmm,
one can be perfect. And so going back to your initial question, like figuring out if an expectation is like actually healthy or not.
mm-hmm.
Uh, there was one time a girl gave me a list of things that she wanted, and so
Okay.
it was things like reading a book together upside down,
Oh,
and
okay.
so it was like things like that, and that is a form of an expectation.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, like there were real expectations. Like make your intentions clear with me at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
After so and so time, I want you to meet my family. After so and so time, I want to know if
Wow.
this is if you're serious about me or if like this isn't gonna work out.
How did you take receiving such a list? Because I know it must have been hard for the girl to like, pen and paper, like put down the list and get like all the little ideas in her mind, like, out there. Like moving from that level one to level two is like hard. But how did you feel being on the receiving end of it? Did you feel like, it was you and this huge mountain that you had to climb of like, wow, this girl, like it takes a lot to like keep her happy? Or did you sort of like, I don't know, I guess this depend on the person in front of you and you were like, okay, challenge like accepted. I will get you the flowers, the just because ones. Like I will, like now you've stated these things, like now I'm going to keep them in my mind and whenever I remember, whenever I feel like it, I'm going to try to do as much of this as I can.
Yeah, that is a great question. I think that when you communicate expectations in relationships, everything kind of comes back to your love languages and how
Okay.
you enjoy receiving love. And
Mm-hmm.
so, taking our very first example and going on trips together, if you enjoy expensive trips, you either enjoy quality time or
Mm-hmm.
you're enjoying gifts
Mm-hmm.
because it's like a lavish thing. The other person
Right.
is spoiling you. And
Mm-hmm.
so, for me, when someone is telling me their expectations, like really what is most helpful is if I identify, oh, this is their love language and this is actually uh, like how they feel most appreciated and seen. And
Mm-hmm.
so when someone gives me a list like that, I'm going to ask and say, is this something that is a must have for you? Or is this
Mm-hmm.
something that would be nice to have?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a must have, then I have to make a decision. Am I actually able to do those things?
Okay.
And and am I going to do those things because I feel obligated to, or
Or
can
did
I do those things like out of joy and gratitude and
mm-hmm.
because I love the other person?
um
Uh, and then
I was
if it's not a must have, then I know like okay, I can do some of them. I don't have to do
right.
all of them, and it's
Mm-hmm.
still okay.
I was just thinking like from the girl's perspective, like um it feels sort of like, I don't know, it feels sort of scary to bring up that list. And then I feel like it's very, very difficult to go from that. I feel like for everyone, probably, to go from the having the expectation to saying the expectation and like discussing it. Because the way that you're talking about it, it's like a very normal part of the relationship. It's like, oh, like these are the things that Ethan wants in his life. Like, can this person deliver on those things? And if they can't, no big deal. Maybe they're just not meant to be together. And it's like very logical.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
guess like how do you take that step of like getting it to that logical level?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's I think it can be dangerous because we never want romantic relationships to come down to like pure logic, feel like a
Yeah.
business meeting. You don't want to have to like sit down and say, okay, you and I are both gonna like share our expectations one by one. That
Yeah.
it feels uh, not spontaneous and not natural. And
Hmm.
so I think that it's an important conversation to have, especially early on, and
Hmm.
especially before you put a label on the relationship. And
Hmm.
so, if you're about to put a label, that is the sign that you should have this conversation before you guys are officially boyfriend, girlfriend.
Hmm.
And I think it's important to bring this up in a casual, but
Hmm.
also maybe a fun way. And
Okay.
so, maybe you can start it off by saying, hey, things are going really well between us right now, and I I wanted to ask if we could exchange letters to each other. And
Mm-hmm.
we can write down like things that we like about each other, things that we've liked about our relationship so far. And
Mm-hmm.
then like when you exchange your letters, you can transition that into, and you read each other's letters, you can
Mm-hmm.
transition into uh, like, oh, these are the things that you've really enjoyed so far. What
Mm-hmm.
are things that you would really appreciate in this relationship moving forwards? So you already set
Mm-hmm.
the tone by doing something lighthearted, doing something a little more romantic and more date-like,
Right. Mm-hmm.
but then it can lead to talking about what you really want. And it's hard to know, like,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you haven't been in a relationship before, it's hard to know exactly what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And so start with your love languages. Like, do you enjoy quality time? Do you enjoy acts of service,
Mm-hmm.
physical gifts, uh, uh, touch, physical touch, and then also words of affirmation? And
Mm-hmm.
so think about what you like as a person. But then it's
Mm-hmm.
also really helpful to start writing a list. And
Mm-hmm.
that way you're able to kind of reflect for yourself and say, oh, these are the things that I actually want.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
What do you think about that?
I think
Like, would
it's
you
like,
enjoy that if a guy did that with you?
I mean, yeah, I think so. I feel like you kind of took this whole topic, Ethan. Like, this is not what I was expecting our conversation to go today. I thought it was going to be a lot more like, oh, but I feel and in my mind and I think, and he never ever meets my expectations. And like, I'm always disappointed and all these things. And you sort of like boiled it down to like what we keep coming back to, which is like communicating it. And like, you gave good examples of like how you can communicate it so that, instead of it feeling like, pressure on anybody or like instead of it having any negative connotations because you're communicating it, it can just like simplify things. It could be like, oh, am I able to meet these needs that my partner has? Are these even needs that they have? Or are these like, oh, it'd be nice to get just because flowers or like whatever. So yeah, I think this is like opening my mind up to a new way of dealing with expectations. So,
Yeah. I think one thing I want to touch on and revisiting like how romantic this all feels at the
mm-hmm,
beginning, it it feels unromantic to talk about what you want, and you really just want like the other person to know that you would enjoy flowers, or
mm-hmm,
that you would enjoy a handwritten card, or that
mm-hmm,
you would enjoy a text saying good morning and good night. And I think the thing that I want to point out is everyone comes from different backgrounds, and they grew up like in a different culture, and they're used to different ways of communicating. And if you
mm-hmm,
really don't say those things, it's
mm-hmm,
really hard for the other person to know, especially if they lack relationship experience or they've been in only toxic relationships in the past. One thing
mm-hmm,
that I want to point out though is that this is something that you do at the beginning. And then, like, if you have to, you can bring it up like during the relationship if things change. But
mm-hmm,
really, you're giving your partner an opportunity to learn a lot about you. And then
mm-hmm.
over time, like they know all those things already. They're not going to need you
Forget.
to like,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
so after that, they're going to have a lot of flexibility to give you love without you telling them anything. So
Mm-hmm.
if I know that you enjoy flowers, okay, I know like for dates, I'm gonna bring flowers to you. But then for
Mm-hmm.
really special occasions, I'm going to like pick your favorite flowers and I'm gonna hand pick
Mm-hmm.
them if I can. So
Okay.
I'm like, because I know that already, now I can kind of take the extra step or play
Mm-hmm.
along with it. And that's when the like romance comes in and the thoughtfulness.
Mm-hmm.
But they have to know at the beginning.
Okay. I think I can get behind that. And then what about, if you've stated you have an expectation, and like now I'm talking about kind of like the bigger ones of like, oh, like, is this going to turn into marriage? And, obviously that one, people take different amounts of times to decide. Maybe like they have like a checklist of like, oh, you should meet my family first. You should do this first before I can even think about that. Whatever. There's like a little because like I feel like when you have these expectations, like it's kind of like you letting yourself be like a spoiled little kid, and you're like, this is your wish list, and like you want all the things on it. So obviously, it feels like a little bad when you're. It's not instant gratification, you know, when you're sort of like, okay, well, I said it. Like TikTok, where are my flowers? Like, um, so it's sort of like, what do you do then? Because I agree, you know, you shouldn't have to keep bringing up your expectations or the things that you want, because that definitely, not only does it like suck out the romance, but like then it starts becoming a thing of like, now we're putting pressure. Like
Yeah.
now this is turning into like, you know, like Sonia's crying about not getting flowers every single time that she hangs out with her partner. And it's like, that's not fun for anyone. Like now if I get those flowers, I'm going to throw them away. Like, you know? So
Mhm.
it's like, how do you know when, okay, when it's like, okay, I need to be patient, or like, okay, maybe I should give them more time, or I need to bring it up again because it's been so long.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think that a lot of times you can ask in a very nice way
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't feel like there's any pressure. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of times if you ask a question, you start off with a question and say, "Hey, what do you think about giving girls flowers? Like, is that
Mm-hmm.
something that uh, you and your friends do? Is that something that you think uh, is romantic?" And that way you kind of create a conversation instead of uh, making a statement and saying, "Oh, like you never get me flowers." And I'm talking about like a question to like understand them, not like a question like, "How come you never
Why?
get me
Yeah.
flowers?" Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so I like asking the "what do you think" questions because
Okay.
it's an easy way to get into the conversation and it takes the pressure off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can always lead with that. And so, like, a lot of times you're right, Sonia, you can't communicate all the expectations right at the beginning because,
Right.
like, if I started dating a girl, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to say right before we define the relationship, "Oh, I expect you to meet my parents
Yeah.
like 1 to 3 months in." I'm not going to say that. It's too
Yeah.
early for that. So
Uh-huh.
I kind of like retract on a little bit on what I said, and like some
Mm-hmm.
things they have to come at the right time. But
Right.
like for me, when I feel ready for my partner to meet my parents, I
Mm-hmm.
think then I'll just start with a question and say, "Hey, what do you think about meeting parents? Like, when do you think that should happen?" And that gives me an opportunity after they share to share what I think and say,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, I think that for me, I would really like you to meet my sister and also come to New York with me for Christmas. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
is that something that you're open to?"
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that's a very good strategy, and I hope people can like implement it. So, Ethan, I feel like what I'm kind of getting as like the summary or like the takeaway of our episode is sort of like there's no bad expectations. You know, like the question that we sort of started off with, like, Sonia, tell us some bad expectations that you can have. It's sort of feeling like, which is a very relief of a feeling, to be honest. It's like there's no bad expectations. It's just like, how do you communicate them? You know, the timing of it, bringing them up to your partner at all. And then also, like, what do you do, like, managing, you know, not having those expectations met? Like, is that like a deal breaker for you that they don't bring you flowers? Like, are you like, okay, well, they're canceled, like, because they've never baked me a dessert? Or like, or is it like, okay, like, I kind of wanted that, but it's okay. Maybe I'll wait for it more because it's not that urgent. Or, like you said, or maybe I'll change my expectations and maybe it's not the fancy trip and maybe it's just like, oh, like we spend the morning together, no phones, like just us, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I agree with you, Sonia. I think though, like if I were to add on one thing, is
Mm-hmm.
that there are some expectations that are less helpful than others. And
Oh.
like you said, like expectations in general, they're not bad. And it
Mm-hmm.
depends on how you communicate them and how you react when your expectations are not met. But
Mm-hmm.
say I had this expectation that I'm always right, that if we fight, the other person needs to say that I'm sorry first.
Okay.
And it's okay to want that. But in a relationship, if I expect that every time, even if I communicated it, it's really hard for a person to be the first one to say, I'm sorry, every single
Mm-hmm.
time. And
Yeah.
so having expectations does not mean that you don't have to work on yourself, that there are like certain things that, like certain toxic traits that you don't have to confront and try to work on. And I'm not trying to like blame everyone who thinks that they need to always be right. But
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying is sometimes there are expectations that are really hard to meet. And there are people
Mm-hmm.
out there who can meet them, but you're going to have to look extra hard for
Mm-hmm.
those kinds of people who
Okay.
who can meet them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like there's still like a silver lining in that though, that it's like now the expectation doesn't feel like it's like you versus your partner and they're always making you sad and you're constantly in this cycle of like they're never like, let's say your expectation is that they text you every day and they're never meeting your expectation. Now it just sort of feels like it kind of feels like it takes the pressure off and it's like, oh, maybe like I've expressed that I need this. They know that I need this and they're not able to meet my expectation, meet like this thing that I feel like I really need. So maybe I need to just like change partners. I need to shop around a little more. And it doesn't feel so bad. It doesn't feel like you're asking for too much. Because I know a lot of people are victim to that kind of thinking too. It's like, oh, am I asking for too much by wanting a call every day? You know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it just feels like, oh, this is something I need and I'm not getting it. So maybe this is not the person for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're giving the other person a chance to also
Yeah.
figure out if
Yeah.
they're the right person for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing that I really want to touch on is that we've talked about a lot of different kinds of expectations. I want to talk about expectations that you should always communicate with your partner. These are
Okay.
essentials that
Okay.
it doesn't really matter exactly what the expectation is or what side of the coin you
Mm-hmm.
fall on, but
Mm-hmm.
these are things that you should always talk about. And these
Okay.
include physical boundaries. You should talk
Mm-hmm.
about like what you're okay with and how far you're willing to go when.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't want to have sex before marriage, that's
Mm-hmm.
something that is important to talk about
Mm-hmm.
so that the other person respects you in that way. Or
Mm-hmm.
if you're not comfortable with holding hands, or
Right.
uh, you don't you don't want to kiss right away, those are things that you should bring up.
Mm-hmm.
And where are your boundaries? So those are physical. You can also talk about other boundaries like emotional, like these are topics that are triggers and you don't want to talk about right now.
Mm-hmm.
Or these are like kinds of movies that you don't like to watch. But
Mm-hmm.
then uh, that's boundaries. I think it's also really important to talk about values, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
includes religion. And so you can watch our episode about religious differences and what to do. But let's say you're religious, the other person is not religious, or they follow a different religion.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to talk about, okay, like I'm okay that you're not religious or that you follow a different religion, but
Mm-hmm.
this is what I would like you to at least respect me and allow me to do what I need to do.
Mm-hmm. Are
Yeah.
there any
So
others, like any other big ones that we can think of?
yeah, I think one other thing is being able to talk about uh, stress. And
Mm-hmm.
so this is what to do when I'm stressed out. And so
Mm-hmm.
I would like you to do this for me when uh, I'm getting like aggravated or feeling sad or anxious. This is what would be really helpful for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. I don't know. Are there any that come to the top of the head.
No, in general, I'm just seeing like a theme. It's like you want to use, like you want to set the tone or like explain certain expectations that you have that'll like help your partner and like help your needs be met at the end of the day. And you're just communicating that. So,
Yeah, yeah. I think those cover like the big areas. So boundaries, stress, and shared values.
hmm
I think those are like non-negotiable. So like the other things that we started out with, those are good too, like
yeah.
flowers or gifts. Um, but then I think those are like the big three that you should always try to cover.
hmm
I think that's like a good point to stop at. And so
hmm
now we'll get into our end segment. We're bringing back their 10, but so we have a couple of different scenarios to bring up today. The very first one is they're 10, but they have an aesthetic Instagram. And so, Sania, you're going to be like commenting if a guy has a very aesthetic Instagram
Uh-huh.
versus me for the girls. But by aesthetic, I mean like uh, lots of model pictures
hmm
and uh, yeah, I think like we'll start off
That they
there.
care about how their grid looks, the colors, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm ready.
Three, two, one.
Wait, I can't see. I can't see. You have to put your. You're at a five. I'm at a
I'm
10.
at a five.
Okay. So
Do you want to? Uh-huh.
yeah, I'll go first because I'm easier. I was really curious about what you would say. And
Mm-hmm.
so if a girl has an aesthetic Instagram, I feel like that doesn't affect anything. It just means like she has an eye for detail. She really
hmm
appreciates making things look nice.
I feel like
And
that's because Instagram is how boys shop around for girls. Like, do you know how many relationships started because of sliding into a girl's DMs? So I feel like
yeah,
aesthetic Instagram, like you kept it at a 10 because it's like, oh, this is a plus. Like, it's great. I
yeah,
get to see what she's all about. I get to see her vibe,
yeah. A
right?
lot of people use Instagram as a dating app. And so
Mm-hmm.
maybe for a profile
Been there.
review, we should like, yeah,
Um, well, I'm gonna say if I see a guy who has an aesthetic Instagram, I put it at a five because I'm just like, it makes me feel like he's super self-obsessed. Because like typically you don't see guys with aesthetic Instagrams. And it's like, why is he trying so hard to like, for girls, you have a nice Instagram because like boys will reach out to you. Like you said, if you're using it as like a dating app, like boys will reach out to you and then you can like decide if you want to like give somebody a chance and things like that. But it's like as a man, if you have that, it's like, girls are not going to be sliding into your DM. So like, what are you trying to do? Why do you care so much about the aesthetics of your Instagram? Like go focus on like the stock market or something. Like it's like a dumb reason for it to be a five, but it kind of feels like you're putting importance on these aesthetics and like visuals and like how things look. But like I would prefer to be with a man that puts importance on like, real like things kind of like he takes it's more important for him to worry about his job. It's more important for him to like I don't know, it feels like there will almost be like a struggle if things go well between you and this person of like, oh, like who gets to design like the house? Like who gets to decide on the aesthetics? Who gets to like and it feels like this person wants a say in every one of those things. And not saying that that's like a bad thing. It could be like a shared responsibility, but like you're not going to be a better man to me because your Instagram is prettier. You will be a better man to me if your bank account's better. You'll be a better man to me if, you're reading good books and you're working on yourself, if you're in the gym all the time. Like those are the things that make you like a more valuable man. But I feel like for women it's different because men go after women because of appearance and visuals. Like men are visual creatures. Like your visual appearance and your Instagram aesthetic is not going to like attract me to you. So when you see a guy with a very pretty Instagram, it's like, who are you doing this for? Because it's not for the girls. Like you're not getting girls by having a pretty Instagram, you know?
yeah. I think no girl wants to feel like the guy that they're with thinks that they're prettier than them.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Um,
I'm not saying like for guys not to do that. but
Yeah,
or have an
like
aesthetic Instagram, but
you can still have your job and you can still be reading your books and going to the gym and doing all of those things and have an aesthetic Instagram. But it just like because usually in relationships men are the pursuers. So it's like by having a very pretty Instagram, you're almost like asking for attention. Like it just doesn't have like a good feeling associated with it. It's the same feeling as like, oh, if you're following tons of like random girls that you don't know, because like guys are the pursuers. So it's like, what are you trying to do with this attention? You
yeah.
know? And I do feel like at some point, I think I saw like a TikTok clip about this. At some point, if you're
So
in a
did
good,
I.
if you're in a good and like healthy situation with your partner, like, even for the girls, like at some point, like maybe you don't care about your Instagram so much. Cause like now, like I'm not saying people have to delete their Instagram accounts, but I've definitely seen that starting to be more of a trend where people are like taking it easy on their Instagram because they're just like they're not posting that they're straps anymore. They're not because they're not looking to get that kind of attention anymore. So it's almost like if you do have an aesthetic Instagram, it's like who is it for? Because if it was for you, you could have like a Visco. Like it doesn't need to be an Instagram. You could print out the pictures and put them up on your walls if you really want. You could do a scrapbook. So it's like, who are you trying to show this to?
Yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
Okay. The next situation, they're a 10, but they don't use a calendar. Like they don't use the app on their phone.
Okay. That's very specific. I think I'm ready.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Three, two, one. Okay.
They
I'm at a
say you're at
9.
an okay, and I'm at an 8. And
Okay.
I feel like a big hypocrite because I barely use my calendar.
Really? I
And
put a lot of stuff in mine.
and so like I put them down to an 8 because like when you don't have a calendar and you're kind of just going off the heezy, it's just easier to forget about things, like lose
Mm,
track of and I do that myself. And
yeah.
I take pride in like remembering things I have to do and like
Hmm.
keeping my schedule straight. But there's just been things that just slip by.
Yeah,
And
totally.
so I think if a girl did that, like I recognize I need to fix this in myself, but I would be a little frustrated if
Hmm.
she missed uh, an important birthday or
Right.
a date.
Hmm.
But in
Um,
general, girls
that's
don't
fine.
really have this issue.
I put them at a 9 because like it's not a huge deal if you don't use it, but I feel like it just like, it's like this is like a super positive. It shows like a positive thing. It shows that you're really organized and on top of things. And those are like very desirable traits. But I put it at like a 9 because I'm like, you can show that you're organized and on top of things with in other ways. You don't necessarily have to use your calendar app. Yes, for similar reasons as you, Ethan. I'm just like, it'd be nice if they did potentially because it's like, oh, they won't forget the anniversaries. They won't forget your mom's birthday or your cousin's birthday or like your sibling's birthday, like things that are, a little out of their daily routine. It just means that they're a little bit more aware of everything, which is kind of cute. But at the end of the day, if they don't use it, like that's okay. As long as they're showing these qualities in other ways, it's okay.
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
Hmm.
Yeah, so maybe I'll go to an 8 or 9,
Yay.
maybe a 9. Yeah. Okay. The last one, they wear sweats all the time. So they don't have the best sense of style. They're just wearing sweats.
Hmm. Okay. I think I'm ready. This one might be controversial.
Okay, I'm ready too.
Okay. Three, two, one. I'm at an 8.
Okay, I'm at a 10.
Oh,
So
whoa. Yours is surprising me.
I think, okay, so I love it when girls wear dresses, when they look very put together, they have jewelry
Hmm.
on. Um,
Right.
but at the end of the day, like when I like someone, it's not just because of their looks. And if they
Mm.
want to go like incognito mode all the time, like I'm okay with that because
Hmm.
like I'm okay if they get less attention from other guys.
Yeah,
Like of
totally.
course, like I want to show her off, but
Yeah.
a lot of times, like like I want that for myself.
Yeah,
And
and
so
that's a
I'm
super
okay.
normal feeling. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why there's still a 10.
Also, I just want to point out, I think guys in some instances prefer girls when they're dressed down compared to when they're like at their best. A lot of men get intimidated by women very easily. I've been seeing this trend, but we're not talking about that today. We're talking about like, for example, I've had many, many, many friends like test out the Trader Joe's theory. Do you know the Trader Joe's theory?
Not tell me about it.
That okay, that like the Trader Joe's cashier will always flirt with you. It's like always going to happen. The Trader Joe's worker, like it's like supposed to happen, but you'll get way more attention from them if you're in sweats, hair messy, like you're in your glasses, you're not even wearing your contacts. Like they're going to make way more conversation with you and try to hit you up more compared to if you show up in your cute heels, your mini skirt and like your nice top and fancy jacket. Like then they're going to be more intimidated by you and they will not try to talk to you as much. So that's like kind of like the Trader Joe's theory that like men prefer you when you're dressed down a little, when you're like, you know, when you kind of look messy and like a little undone.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I get that. I think, to be honest, I think what happens is like guys will talk to you no matter what. And so it's either gonna be a Trader Joe's guy or it's gonna be like finance bro, like that you cross the street
that's fair.
with.
That's fair,
So
actually.
yeah,
Yeah, no matter what you wear, you're gonna get attention, girls.
yeah,
Okay,
that's
I
right.
said an eight because, um, well, because to be honest, like kind of for similar reasons, Ethan. It's just like, yeah, if you're gonna dress up, like I would rather like I help you do the dressing up or like you're dress up around me. But on the daily, I want you to look like not apart from the crowd. I don't want you to be getting like so much attention because again, like I feel like girls have more insecurities about this, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe it's kind of everywhere that it's like why are you wanting so much attention? And like I myself am a person that like I just like to dress up for me. So like I know that that's totally a valid possibility, but it's like for some reason when a guy is doing it, because guys are not used to receiving attention, it just like it feels like scarier and it's just like what do you like, you know, like what are you going to do with that attention?
So you almost prefer them in sweats?
Yeah.
Oh shoot.
Or like, yeah, like, and again, I only put it at like an eight. If they're wearing sweats all the time, like, obviously, I would like them to have a good fashion sense. Obviously, those are all positive things. But the statement was like, oh, they're a 10, but they wear sweats all the time. And I'm like, okay, like it could be like a bit of like an inconvenience if they're in sweats all the time. Because I've been to so many different, I've hung out with many different groups of people, and I hate seeing the aesthetic of like super rich guy dressed super casually and his wife or his girlfriend is like super dressed up. Like I don't like the Justin
Mm,
Bieber and Hailey Bieber aesthetic. I'm just like, what do you like? It kind of feels like disrespectful to the other person if you're not dressing up. But then I can also see the flip side of it where it's like, okay, you're not attracting too much attention. Like, you know, you're for my eyes only, which is like not bad. So that's why it's
yeah,
like at an eight because I could see sort of both sides of it. But in general, it's like less bad that you're not like the alternative of like if you look like a superstar all the time, like that would be a little bit like making me feel uneasy. Yeah.
yeah, got it.
Hmm.
Cool. Well, we're gonna end the episode there. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And we hope this was helpful and we'll catch you guys in the next one.